All right, good afternoon again. Thank you for joining our workshop today. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Latoya, if anyone else comes in, would you mind just letting them in just in case I don't see them? All right, again, good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Jeree Burgess, and we will go ahead and talk a little bit about me in a few minutes. But I want to start by welcoming you to our workshop today. This is a BEN workshop put on by the Bermuda Education Network. And our workshop today is all about living things, a cross-curricular approach. So before we get started, we are going to talk first about what BEN is. So those of you who may not know, BEN stands for Bermuda Education Network, and it's an organization that was created to address the achievement gap between public and private schools. And within BEN, we have a numerous amount of programs. We have the BEN Book Club, which is a book club that caters to, P1 to preschool to P1 students. And the BEN Book Club pretty much just aims to foster a love for reading. We also have the Young Coders Club, which is a program at the Barclay Institute, and it's a partnership between Connect Tech and Bermuda Education Network. Next, we have the Horizon program, which is what you are a part of, and that offers field trips and cross-curricular learning experiences for both teachers and students. The Horizon program allows teachers to access lesson plans and other resources which are found on the Bermuda Education Network website. And lastly, we have the summer reading program, which is a reading program aimed for P3 students, which happens at the end of the school year, happens during the summer. It's for 3 weeks. It's a free program, and it's aimed to support students who are working to meet those grade level reading benchmarks. So not students who are below, not students who are above where they should be at that given time, but there's students who are very close to meeting that on-grade reading level. So we will provide them with support. And that is pretty much most of the programs that we have for BEN. And as you can see, we are supporting students. So we have teachers that are supported as well as students. And we are, again, working to address that achievement gap. So that's a little bit about BEN. My name is Jeree Burgess. I am a teacher within the Bermuda Public School System. I've taught primary 2 for 4 years. Currently, this is my second year teaching primary 3, and I have taught at Paget Primary School for all 6 years. I'm also the mathematics teacher leader at Paget Primary School, and I have joined BEN as a network teacher due to my love for cross-curricular teaching and high interest in science and social studies. And so today we are going to walk through our workshop for living things. All P2 students have or should be beginning to learn about living things. And so I'm going to walk you through that workshop. And so we're going to get started with a funny joke. Why are fish so smart? Because they live in schools. So let's get started. The first lesson that we have is all about habitats. So as you know, a habitat is a place where an animal and a plant live, and living things get food, water, and shelter from their habitat, which keeps them alive. There are many different habitats in the world and many different animals that can live in one habitat. So that's pretty much a short introduction that we would give to our students to provide them some information about what a habitat is if the students do not know that already. So jumping into the lesson, we would play the habitat song for the students. So I'm just going to click on it and allow you to listen to that for a few minutes.
Who's ready to hatch some cool pets? Click here to make your very own
habitat. Have to have a habitat, habitat. Have to have a habitat, habitat. Have to have a habitat, you have to have a habitat to carry on. The ocean is a habitat, very special habitat. It's where the deepest water's at, where the biggest mammals at, where our future food is at, keeps the atmosphere intact. The ocean is habitat we depend on. Habitat, have to have a habitat, habitat. Have to have a habitat, habitat. Have to have a habitat, you have to have habitat to carry on.
Okay, so that was our song for habitat. So we're going to imagine that we're teaching this lesson. So I provide the students with an introduction on what habitats is. I let them listen to the habitat song, and then I'll read them a book which also touches on habitats. And so I have linked in here the read aloud that goes with the book, and the book is entitled The World Beneath Our Waves, and all of you will also be getting this book as well that you can read to your students. So following the song, following the read aloud, I would ask students to identify what was the habitat presented in the book and make a list of habitats and generate these habitats as well as the animals that live within the habitats on an anchor chart. Students will then create what we call a habitat diorama with one animal that lives in the habitat. After the lesson is complete, just so that I can check to make sure that my students have understood what we have been learning about habitats, I would just ask students to define the word habitat. Down the bottom, we have included the standards that this lesson is aligned with. So we have the science standard, as well as those ELA standards for reading. So we have for science, the students are going to know that an environment is, know that an environment in which a plant or animal naturally lives in is its habitat. And then for our ELA standards, we're using the vocabulary. So students are going to be talking about habitats, animals, plants, about the familiar topic, talking about the sequence of events or ideas in the text. So once we've read The World Beneath Our Waves book, we're going to talk about what was going on in that story, and then answer simple questions from reading that text. And so here's an example of the different anchor charts and dioramas that the students can be presented with and engage in during the lesson. So here's an example of the habitat anchor chart that we have here. Following the reading, where as a class we would generate first the habitat and then the animals that live there and plants. And then for the habitat diorama, this is what we have here, where students can create a habitat and then an animal that lives within that habitat. So as you can see, there's not much that goes into this diorama. All it is a paper plate, and students will use their crayons to first create the habitat, and then they would fold it up and the teacher would staple around it and then create the animal that lives in that habitat. So that would be the first lesson to introduce our students to habitats. The second, again, I'm going to start with my introduction, allowing students to understand what a habitat is. And then just so that I can see if students have remembered what was taught during the last lesson, I will provide students with statements. And so the students will then answer the statements by saying whether the statement I give is true or false. So I may say that a habitat is a place where a human lives. So students will choose whether that's true or false, and then we will have a discussion about that. And then I've also included another habitat video here. And I'll play that really quickly.
Our planet, a world of shifting landscapes, each with different challenges for the creatures who make it their home. Diving deep under the water's surface, we can see how one animal has evolved for the underwater world it inhabits. The octopus. With its 8 arms, it propels itself along the seabed, sometimes swimming, climbing over rocks, feeling its way.
Okay, so I'll stop there. So pretty much in that video, they're gonna expose students to not only different habitats, but as well as the animals that live within that habitat. And so once the video is complete, I would ask students to identify the habitats that were shown in the video and the animals that live within each habitat, and put a list on an anchor chart so students may be able to identify that one habitat was the ocean and the animals that live within that ocean were the octopus and the fish, for example. And then students will then create a sorting mat. And on their sorting mat, students would identify 3 habitats and include the different animals that live in each habitat. So these could be habitats that the students have seen on the video shown, or it could be habitats and animals that the students already knew. And then at the end of the lesson, I will allow students to do a gallery walk around and view their peers' sorting mat. And then down the bottom, we have the different science standard that this lesson aligns with. And so this standard for this lesson is for students to know the different habitats contain different plants and animals. And so here I have an example of the sorting mat that students will create. And so as you can see, this is a fancy one. It doesn't have to be so fancy. They have the different habitats. So they have the water habitat, the land habitat, the air habitat. Now you can get your students to be as specific as you want. It's completely up to you. Maybe instead of saying water, you want them to say ocean. Maybe instead of saying land, you want them to say the desert. So it's completely up to you, but the students have identified 3 different habitats as well as the animals that live in that habitat. Another joke. How do bees get to school? By school bus. All right, we have lesson 3 now. And lesson 3, we are talking about local environments. And so again, introducing students to what a habitat is. And now to jump into local habitats, I'm gonna start by showing my students different pictures of habitats. So I want to make sure that the habitats that I'm showing my students are not only habitats that are overseas, but habitats that are local as well. And so once I've shown the students the habitats, I want my students to think about what are the differences between the habitats. So we're trying to get students to identify that some habitats are here in Bermuda, some habitats are not in Bermuda. And then we want students to be able to choose 2 local habitats and compare and contrast between the habitats on a Venn diagram. So students may identify the ocean as a habitat that we have here, but a desert as a habitat that we do not here, that we do not have here, sorry. So we want students to be able to identify 2 habitats that are in Bermuda. And then students will then complete a writing activity where they would choose 1 local habitat and then think about where they would want to live if they was an animal and why would they want to live in that habitat. Okay, and so when the students are thinking about our local habitats, we want the students for this lesson to be able to give words to describe the habitat, whether it's wet, it's cold, dry, for example. So for this science standard, the students are identifying similarities and differences between local environments. And so that those are those words: hot, cold, dry, wet. And then for our ELA standard, we have students grouping together sentences relating to similar ideas. And so here I have an example of what the Venn diagram would look like. So here, as you can see, students are going to choose those 2 local habitats and they're going to identify them, write them in the box. And then they're going to use words to describe those habitats to compare and contrast them. And then I also included for you an example of what it could look like. So let's imagine that the student has chosen the ocean habitat and the pond habitat. The differences being that the ocean is salt water, the pond is fresh water, the ocean is a big body of water, the pond is a small body of water, and then they also have some things in common. Both habitats are not only local, but they are also both wet, they are cold, and warm at the same time. All right. Our last lesson that we have here is a habitat gas. And so here's a little fun thing that the students can do, which is hands-on. So we want to wrap up our unit on habitats by maybe allowing students to go on to Kahoot, to play a true false game, pen, paper. It's completely up to you, but we just want students to show that they have understood what has been taught to them about our habitats in this unit. And so I will start with a review activity, and I would personally do Kahoot because that's something that my students love to do. And then I was allow students to work in groups, and I will provide each group a habitat. So group A may have the ocean, group B may have the desert, so on and so forth. And in their groups, students will create a habitat using the materials that I provide to them. And then the other students will then go around and take a walk and look at the habitats, and their job is to identify what is the habitat that the other groups have created. And then at the end of the lesson, I will have students write which habitat they liked and explain why. And so this lesson will align with the ELA standard of writing clear statements, commands, instructions, and questions. And so here I have an example of the different habitats that the groups can make. So as you can see here, we have a group that made the Arctic habitat. We have over here the ocean, we have rainforests. So we have lots of different habitats that the students use their imagination based on the materials that they were given, and the other groups guessing what the habitat was, not only based on what the habitat looks like, but also using the knowledge of the animals that are in the habitat as well. Because remember, we want the students to know that the habitat is a place where animals and the plants live. And so that's it for our lessons. So we have 4 lessons in that Habitats and Living Things unit. Thank you for attending. And so we're going to be asking for your feedback. And so we have a link here where you could provide feedback for our workshop today. And if you have any pictures that you would like to share, you can send them to the email addresses that you see on the screen, admin@ban.bm or horizons@ban.bm. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Latoya, who is going to provide you with some information about your upcoming expedition, which is going to be, again, centered around the living things and the habitats that we have just talked about. And also, sorry, before I turn it over to Latoya, our workshop for today will be uploaded to the Ben website, okay? So if there's any resources or anything that you would like to get your hands on, you'll be able to access that on the Ben website. All right, so I'm gonna stop share so that Latoya can give you some information about your upcoming expedition.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, teachers. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We know you're busy. I just wanted to have a quick word. I've just opened this sign up, so the slots are available for you. But I just wanted you to know ahead of time that some of you may know already from last year, Kaleidoscope is limited on space. So we have to be very careful about how we schedule our lessons there. The usual maximum is 15 students for their classroom, but we have arranged for them to take slightly larger classes, but only on Thursdays. If your class is larger than 15, I'm going to ask you to use those Thursday spots. And also, we have several two-stream schools who are now co-teaching. If you are in that situation, I would ask that you and your co-teacher take the morning and then the afternoon slots on Thursdays. And we have available, I'm just double checking here, 1, 2, 3 larger and 2 stream class options. All right. So I just ask that you would do that just so we can manage the sizes. Kaleidoscope is prepared for larger classes on Thursdays only. So if you have a smaller class, you have the option of Monday or Tuesday, but we're going to leave those Thursday classes for larger classes. Okay. All right. And if you were to go back on the Sign Up Genius right now, you'd see those options are now available to you. I will give you time tonight, but I will remind the rest of the P2 teachers of the sign up tomorrow. So if you get an opportunity to sign up, you can do that tonight, please, for first preference. Okay. That's it for me.
All right. Thank you again for coming. Before we go, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I think we're good. And I think everyone you should be able to have a free Sign Up Genius account. I know we had some questions about them asking for a credit card, but you should not have to put in a credit card for a Sign Up Genius account. Okay. And if you have any issues with signing up, my direct email is horizons@ben.bm if you have any other questions. Okay.
Okay, thanks again, everyone, for coming. That concludes our workshop today on living things and habitats. I would like to thank you all for coming. Latoya, we have one question. Can you share the link?
I'm just going to put it in now.
Okay.
Okay, so that should take you direct to the sign up and you'll see all these spaces.
All right, so you have your link where you can sign up for your expedition to Kaleidoscope. If there are no other questions or concerns, once again, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoy your expedition and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Dubose, were you able to sign up? Oh. And she was trying to sign up.
Okay.
Maybe not.